All right, welcome to the April 7th, 2022 Library Trustees meeting. We're going to start with public participation. Anyone on Zoom?
Doesn't want that.
No one is here in person, so we'll keep going. Any correspondence?
Of course.
And we move to the approval of the minutes for March 3rd.
I will say that I know for sure I sent these late. I apologize, and they do not include the treasurer's numbers, which I did know that.
Yeah.
So those will be added.
Yeah. Do you want me to say them now, and we'll talk about them?
I mean, it's up to you guys. And I just Sam asked me for them, and I sent them without being edited, and I could have added them. I didn't. I apologize for that. I can add them and send them again, or you can add them or whatever. What makes the most sense?
I think you have the numbers.
Did you?
Okay, why don't we just insert them and then
Yeah. Okay. The building fund, this is for the month of February. The building fund was $961,295.49. Do you have them now?
I have them.
Okay.
I have them in my notes.
All right. The grant amount was $4,688,651.20, and the gift fund was $5,178.21.
those are like
Those and send them again, or I don't know if you.
we can approve as amended.
Yeah, I just had a few other interesting facilities. I know you mentioned it.
They weren't edited, it wasn't edited, so it was probably other typos.
Okay.
Yeah, there aren't a few typos or little things.
Yeah.
But
So I think we can approve it without that feeling near it, but then, like, it doesn't change the context. Yeah. Okay, move to approve the minutes as amended for March 3rd, 2022.
second. Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is everyone. All right, so the treasurer's report.
Okay, and then for today. Okay, we all have a copy of the BART report. The amount has not changed substantially since last month. Good.
Didn't go down.
Really what I
That's
was
good,
wondering about,
because
yeah.
it was going down.
Okay, so the three account amounts, for the gift amount is $2,405.96. The building fund is $989,353.53. And the grant fund is $4,689,547.88. I emailed those to the trustees today. So
Yes,
and I already have them in here. Excellent. Okay.
you're a step ahead here.
I can step ahead.
Or once. All right, thank you for sending them once you have them. You want to approve the treasurer's report? Anything else to report on the treasurer's report before?
Nothing else.
I move to approve the treasurer's report. Second. All in favor? Aye. Great. And now the friends report.
Okay, so they are doing well financially so far this year. They have 9,500 in income, 7,000 of which is in membership. And they sent out email reminders for people who hadn't renewed their membership, and that seemed to work because they got a good response to that.
Believe me.
The book sale room has made over $1,200 since the library opened in November, so that is a good thing. The Seed Library had an open house. I think they were going to have that when we had the meeting, so I don't know how that went.
They did that one over.
Okay. Okay. And so the big things they talked about were the book sale, which is coming up the weekend of the 29th. So April 29th, it starts. Before that, for anybody who's interested, the day to drop off all the books you want to get rid of is April 26th. So that is the day that they are asking people to drop off any books they want to donate. And they will have NHS students there helping, and then the following day to bring boxes from the trailer and then get things set up throughout that week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is set up, and then the sale will be Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So if people want to donate books, which I know there are a number of people who are told to keep their books,
Yes.
what do they need to know?
I think all day, when I understand, anytime on Tuesday, the 26th.
And they come here during library hours?
During library hours. Does that sound right, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay. And bring them downstairs or upstairs at the desk or
I think friends are gonna have somebody here
to show around to people?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Is the search term book off for them like the whole week? Okay, so they can stack things afterward. Good.
So that is coming up, and then the April is transfer station redemption month. So volunteers have been sorting and redeeming bottles and cans. So anybody has any bottles and cans sitting around, bring them to the dump this month to donate to the friends. And the sign-up genius went out to solicit volunteers. So I think everything is going fine with that. My kids enjoy sticking the cans into the machine, so whatever makes them happy.
Can get some volunteer hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Caroline just likes, she just likes hearing the sound of the glass breaking, so.
That's pretty safe, that's
Yes. Then they approved summer reading request funds, 4,000 for children and 1,400 for young adults. And then there was talk of doing a fundraiser through Anthony's. They have a charitable thing. So there was I believe it was crowd. So there was some company that was connecting them with Anthony's to do a fundraiser, and that was under discussion. And then planning ahead for staff appreciation, just to start the ball rolling thinking about that.
When is staff appreciation runway?
In May, I think. I did not write any more details down about that. So. That's it. Yeah, sure. We need to, I'm blanking.
I don't think so. Just get the report. All right, building update. Sam, how do you go?
Sure. So we're working with the OPM to start closing out, figure out what the contractors has left to do and what can just go under warranty. Next week on the 15th, they are coming out here to do a walk around the building to see how the grass is growing in. And if there's anything we have to do with that, take a look at the outside of the building, see if there's anything that needs to change. And we're also going to talk about some of the interior issues that we're still working through and figuring out how that could be fixed. So things like getting the lighting right, getting the heating right, those systems,
We'll talk more about that.
yeah, under control. And then there's still like little things like certain latches and locks aren't locking correctly for some small study rooms. Some areas need to be touched up with paint. The employee exit, when it rains, it's basically like walking through a waterfall. So they have to figure out how there's a diverter in there, but that was installed, but it doesn't look like it's working the way it's supposed to work. So they're gonna come and take a look so that when it rains or snow melts, you know.
Yes, so when you leave work or something.
Right. So I'm working with Brian, Joe Cam, and his assistant Eric, getting that figured out. And then Brian thinks that he talked to MBLC and they think they can give us the final payment in July for August.
In terms of, I know we're gonna talk about this, but discussing about electricity and things like that, are those gonna be additional hours that we need to find funds for, or is it kind of still covered under what we're paying them?
Yeah, it's covered under what we're currently paying. That's what they're trying to
Still
figure out.
under the project.
Yeah, they're under the project. That's why they're trying to close it out because we pay them a premium for the way that wages work in the state. So we want to make sure we're getting everything done, but
And it's timely manner.
and it's time.
But also done well, so we don't have to keep bringing it back. It's the balance, the two.
Right. And then the furniture people are coming tomorrow morning. They're going to put the final children's room, the tops on the shelves. and there's some shelving that needs to be installed. But hopefully they'll install. So they're coming tomorrow morning to do that.
That would be nice to have.
That's all I got.
Great. So Mark also emailed me. So Mark is not here today. Taking a well-deserved vacation. So he emailed me a quick update. One was that as we're trying to close out the account, we're also trying to get a much more better estimate of what our final project cost is. And every week or 2 weeks, he's trying to get the next digit kind of thing. So at this point, we're sitting between 14.6 million and 14.7 million, which is just about the target that we had. I think that is the target.
Yeah.
That is where we were hoping to land. So we are right in the ballpark of what we had planned for. And then he's going to keep working with Brian to get that. And then Mark and I also attended the March 28th select board meeting where the select board authorized the solar panel contract to be signed. Has that been signed?
Yes.
It has. Okay.
So I have an update on that.
You will give me an update on that in a second then. So that's good. So that was on its way. And my understanding is once that was signed, we can apply for the LEED certification, which will give us that money back on the grant. So things are moving in the right direction, which is good. And anyone else have a building update?
Yeah,
I do the solar panel.
I can do the solar
Okay.
panels. Mark also indicated that the car chargers are coming and it remains an open question of who's paying for the installation. And he is going to loop me into a meeting around figuring that piece out. And I don't know if this needs to be in the meeting minutes, but there's some question as to whether or not the wildflowers that were planted are going to be growing. And we're supposed to watch for that because we may need to receive them and they are under warranty if they do not.
Yeah, I think that's part of
part of that part. Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that's next. That's the April 15th. Yeah. Is it? Okay. Cool.
Great. So the town did agree to forward and sign the agreement to the solar panels. And then today I attended a kickoff meeting with the group that's going to be liaising with the solar panel company. It was very positive. They're finalizing the last of the paperwork around the contract, and that's anticipated to be completed by the end of this week. The company is going to reach out to you, Sam, to schedule a site visit, hopefully next week, and do a walk around, but they are familiar with the building. The installation will be happening during library hours, and the company said they are very used to working with municipal buildings, and they assured everybody that the traffic in and out of the building and the staff and patrons would be safe throughout. You shouldn't be affected because the work will be happening while the library is opening, and it's open, so that's good. And then there's a little bit of an open question regarding the model. The specs of the panels is being worked out, and the installation, once it moves forward, only takes about 3 or 4 days. So I will have more updates, and they will keep me looped in, and I will report back.
Do you have another meeting already planned, or is that?
It sounds like they're going to be meeting weekly, but nothing is in sight yet.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you for attending that and taking that piece of the.
Absolutely, happy to.
On. All right. Any other buildings? Trustee updates? Go on, sir, from here.
I just picked up a stack of guidebooks to help prepare for April vacation, so that's exciting. But yeah, usual nothing too new. Been collecting bottles and cans for.
It sounds like you're doing bottles and cans.
That's been entertaining.
Thank you for doing that. Sure. Chris, do you want to pipe in yours? Sure.
I don't really have too much. My regular responsibility of signing bills and signing off on things for Susan.
Yeah.
Hi. My heart and lung kind of overlaps, so Katrina, she read her notes and said, oh yeah, I did those too. Mira was there also. We had to move the metal shelving and furniture from the children's room down to the second floor. So the parks department turned the former children's room into a teen center. Attended the MBLC breakfast, really enjoyed talking to my parents. So there's some other like library trustees and some people are like very ready to have their own new library. And then also with Mark and Katrina and Sam, we worked out with the town finance director to talk about not only the electricity issue, but also just going forward, what our plans for how to use how to plan better for using our funds. And then side note, I'm also checking the puzzle table once a week to see if the puzzles are being done, because people have the habit of pulling out thousands of these puzzles and just doing the outside and then no one comes to do the inside. So if it's there for more than we get through it, and another piece of project.
Thank you for being that puzzle volunteer.
Tuesdays, I'll do that. That's all.
If you want the puzzle to stay, you gotta make progress before Tuesday.
Does it have to be finished within a week or just
No,
progress?
just like seeing, there's a lot of these puzzles that are super hard, and people take them out and just do the outside, and then never come back. There's puzzles that have 3 colors and there are 1,000 pieces. No one's ever gonna do that puzzle, right? So I want to see more of a, I want to see more of a thing where people actually want to do the puzzle, even I don't want to do those puzzles, right?
We might need to weed the puzzles and put them in the book
I
sale.
actually moved the puzzles that were really hard to the bottom shelf, but it would be nice if we just took them out, but I didn't know if I was allowed to do that, so I didn't.
So, yeah, I was gonna say, let's maybe weed the ones that we don't think are good and then offer them in the book sale.
That was one about Quebec, we're in Quebec over the winter, and it was a terrible puzzle I've never done. We absolutely dropped it off, and someone started it, and we ended up putting it back in the box and putting it on the bottom shelf, and no one wants to.
Oh, I've done that. That was fun.
It's all yours, Sarah. Make a good deal next week.
Are we allowed to just take the puzzles, bring them home, and bring them back? Is that still happening?
Well, if I take the puzzles and move them to someplace else entirely.
No.
It's your deal.
I feel responsible. Helpful of somebody, because there was one point in time I went in, the whole thing was covered in different puzzles, and I was like, oh gosh, like that is an organizational nightmare.
Right.
It was like tracking. Anyway, it's good. It's nice to have puzzles. All right.
Excellent.
You gave us a big part of your update.
I'm excited to be working with Mark and taking over, trying to fill a little tiny piece of issues, especially around solar panels, and being a liaison around that. I picked up cans for the transfer station, which we find it very soothing as it crunches in, and that was a whole afternoon, so that was fun to do, and I just dropped that back off. The YA room has gotten such rave reviews, especially in the last month or two. The kids have been so excited, and I hear a lot of stories of just about the energy and the activities. And it sounds like the library in there in particular is like, if anyone's sitting alone, it's a lot of, kind of social skills 101, like when they come together and start these games off and things like that, which has been really nice to kind of hear about. So thank you for that. I've run into a lot of older adults in the book room, in particular, looking for volunteer opportunities, and have been liaising with the friends about how to connect around that. And I don't know if it makes sense to have some kind of sign up or something available.
Yeah, Kimberly made a.
I made a Google Doc.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
Yes.
I was going to bring it up this time because if you remember to talk about it, but I do have a Google Doc.
And as we are just maybe less tech savvy,
That's,
that might be helpful.
maybe we could print it out.
Or that we can help put in a Google Doc or something, but there were a lot of, folks just looking, to do that, and especially some that were newer to town and just weren't kind of sure how to help, where to help, and just in love with the building, so that was really kind of neat too.
And we did talk about that, opportunities for volunteers, and there hadn't been much because of COVID, but with the transfer station and the book sale, there's a few more opportunities.
Yeah, and it sounded like the age range, for whatever reason, I seem to be running into is not quite Council of Aging, or like fully invested in the Council of Aging, but definitely kind of pseudo-retirement and looking for, some skills to kind of spread and looking to put it here, which is really lovely conversations, kind of happy to help. And the other thing I've noticed, I'm hoping it's true, but Sam from the librarians can say is some more responsibly used from the 12-year-old crowd, and those kind of crowds, especially on the happenings and stuff. I've had some meetings here myself that have come up as quieter. It's been respectful overall, so I hope that some of the efforts that everyone's made, the patience of the team, has kind of paid off. The culture's been reset, so that's what I've noticed.
One thing as we're talking volunteer opportunities, does your form differentiate friends from library?
It does not.
So I'm wondering, This actually feeds into one of my updates. So over the last month, I actually sat on 2 webinars the MDLC put on. One of them was about fundraising, library foundations and fundraising, and libraries have various sources of fundraising resources and who's in charge of what and overlapping things. And I see us as in this transition, like not only to the new building, but also in terms of we don't have a building fund anymore, but we still need trustee money, and what's an annual appeal versus the Friends monthly ongoing stuff, membership, like all of that stuff fits in differently. So I sat in on this to kind of learn. And part of that comes to the volunteer piece too, where Friends is its own organization and needs volunteers, and the library needs some volunteers, but they need them in very specific ways. So I think we need to maybe talk to Friends about how to
definitely. I do have
funnel volunteers who want to be more involved in a regular location on a regular basis to Friends, because that would be great if they have room, capacity, interest in having people actively involved.
On the form, I do have this as Friends of RHL, but if we wanted to have a special, like if RHL kind of wanted any more specific, like kind of options, like what are you interested in? This is a checklist. Right, like what kinds of things I reached out to Catherine and Diane and Jenna. I got ideas from them. So, I didn't want to.
We don't want to overburden the form.
Right. Well, also, I mean, it's really not that busy a form or anything. It's just, I would have brought it up to David if there were more. So maybe we can talk about it. We could also circle back to it like on a different meeting.
Yeah, maybe we could share it after this meeting. So that we can all think about it.
You all have it, but
I think we do, but re-hit us.
Yeah.
So that was one of my things. Like, I think this is a point in time where we really should sit down with Friends and be like, what is it that what is your goal? Mm-hmm. And what, like we know that they do membership and all these other things, but, and advocacy fits in here too. So it's like, who's advocating for what to whom? So there's this larger map and they drew it, and it was an hour that my brain exploded and I'm still digesting. So I was sitting there, and they actually used us as one of the examples for the building fund and the capital project is what our main thing was. But now they even said, and now they're probably transitioning. I'm sitting there like, yes, that's why I'm here. So it was an interesting webinar. The other webinar I sat in on was related to the grant you'll talk about later, but it was welcoming patrons to our deaf, hard of hearing, and or late veterans to our library, which again, I sat in on this and like, I didn't know what I didn't know times a million. It was like, I have the slides, I'm happy to like share them with everyone, but it was one of those things I was just like, wow, there's so much to this that I was so unaware of that I didn't know I didn't know. So things that I can't, that's what prompted me to ask you to give us an update on grant later in this meeting. So, and then I also joined Kimberly, Mark, Sam with the finance director, topics we'll discuss soon. And then I also attended that MDLC legislative breakfast. It was great. It was really nice to like walk around and get to show off the library and like so the good things. Like, so everyone was really like, we're ready for our own, but it was nice to talk to them and hear what their challenges are and things. Asking the questions like, what would you do differently? Like, what would you plan differently? And things like that. So it was really nice to be like, well, what would I do differently if I get to do it again?
Kind of would be nice if there was some sort of way to meet up with other trustees from other local libraries on a more regular basis, like every month or something like that. Because we probably are all kind of doing similar things. Actually,
it's a really interesting concept to see if others in the Groton or Westbury or whatever. Bounce ideas off. Does that happen, Sam? Do you know? Do trustees get together just to?
Sometimes MDLC will hold meetings. I think because of the pandemic, they kind of
just fell apart.
Usually, it's more about webinars or training workshops where the trustees meet.
The webinars come like every week, and every once in a while I can make one, so I try to. They're really helpful.
Yeah, they used to hold workshops before the pandemic, but since then,
I wonder if this is simple. I mean, I don't know how much things we could talk about not in a public meeting, but I think we're talking to the trustees generally speaking, even like a Facebook group, if there was one for trustees, something
I
like
don't
that.
know.
I'm just suggesting maybe like one of those could create one. Like if people were interested in that, then maybe it was a place where you could reach out.
But even, if we want to do that, we could reach out even to the trustees of the other ones. See what they're doing.
The trustee in my agency, she and I go back and forth regularly, like after meetings, what's going on in her world. She's in the process of securing funding for buildings, so like they're way behind, but it's, so I could just see kind of what else is happening. She's in the southern region. Just kind of what's out there.
It's not a bad idea.
Because if we can pass our information around from the building thing, maybe they've got information for us about integrating more diversity, things like that.
Interesting concept. Yeah. All right, and then we've been trying to keep on top of the old buildings. I know the perception is that we kind of left it a mess, and that's not true. Mark and I have been trying to like get the plan for the old building from before we moved into this building. So we were trying to set the plan for getting rid of the old shelves and the furniture and whatnot. And at a select board meeting back in November, December, that responsibility was transferred to the town administrator's building. But in the meantime, the old building department on the first floor, parking rec's taking over the top 2 floors. And they're still trying to make improvements right now that they can make so that they can move their departments in. One of them was Park and Rec needed help clearing out the old children's rooms so that they can make it a teen center. And so I organized, like you guys came, thank you, Mira and Kimberly came to provide some muscle, but then we also got my Girl Scouts and like some other kids there who needed volunteer hours. And within 2 hours, everything was out of that children's room space, and it's all now on the 2nd floor. So there's still more work to be done to finish cleaning out the building. But Park and Rec, in the meantime, since the floor was clean, they replaced the carpet, they've painted the walls, they've made it a teen center with ping pong tables and video games and like all these things up there. I got a sneak peek yesterday and I was like, this is amazing. Like, it's amazing. So it's a really nice asset that we now have, or the town they now have to use. And I think their plan is to use it for their 5 to 8 club, which is to 3rd to 8th grade after school program. And then also in the summer for their teen adventures, camps and things. And so it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. It looks really good. I must be out in person yet.
I haven't, but Saul and Zora have seen it.
Yeah, I watched the library, the elevator doors open, and I was like, "Oh!" And they saw my face. They're like, "Yeah, this is good, right?" This is amazing. It was kind of, it was
the old furniture and design for it. I think you mentioned that there has to be some kind of open thing where people can come and decide if they want it, or they have to auction it.
there is a whole process.
Is that who's responsible? Are we responsible for that?
No, so back in December, once we figured out what the process, this is what Mark and I were trying to like get on top of last fall because we wanted to get ahead of it so the building can just sit with this.
Yeah.
So there is a whole process. It is now in the town administrator's responsibility to do. So anytime I told Park and Rec, and the building department's floor has been totally clean. But I'm like, if you need help moving things again, I can get my Girl Scouts back here. I can do whatever. We'll get people that give you a hand.
Yeah.
So just let us know because we're not trying to be obstructionists here. This is literally out of our hands at this point. But if you need something that we can help with, I will. Yeah. I'm happy to volunteer my hours for you. So like, let's do this. So that was in 2 hours. So we quickly cleaned it out. So it's nice to see that building starting to take life for a different use. I think that's all mine. Yeah. Director's report.
Okay, so on Monday, April 4th, we held a staff meeting. At the meeting, we discussed all the policies we've been updating so far. Talked about the library of things, how that's working out and how it can be improved, and how the staff can access it on our software aspect. We talked about any building maintenance issues they want me to bring up with the OPM before it gets closed out. So they shared some things with me. And then we talked about the great changes Catherine's been making in the YA room and all the new updated programming, how she's kind of made the room her own and it's really great. And we also talked about how the staff can communicate better, how we can all, make sure things go through the right chain of command, and I hear about things that need to be heard. Cheryl is leaving on May 11th. She decided to retire. So I'm working with HR to fill her position, and I'll be posting it. I'm working on posting it this week or probably next week. We had MBLC legislative breakfast here on March 18th. It was hosted by Senator Jamie Eldridge and with representatives from MBLC and MLS, and Katrina spoke and I spoke, and the director of the Westford Library, Ellen Greenville, seated for us. And we had a lot of directors and other trustees and friend groups that came to the meeting, so it was real great. And I've also been contacted a lot by other library directors who want to know about opening their own library. So we had a visit from the director of the library of the Mount Wachusett Community College Library, and another library director also came. I didn't know she was coming. She came with Lauren from MBLC. They just kind of showed up.
Did they hear it here?
Yeah. And then some library programs. We had several library programs over the last month. Some regular ones like Littles and Letters, Library Book Club, and Toddler Story Time. We also had the Seed starting activity for kids and the Seed library. We had the launch party for that. That went really well. We had 50 people come to that. And the rest is really just stats. Door count has increased. It's actually larger than that because we accidentally had a mom push her stroller through the door counter and broke it.
Oh, no.
So for a couple of days it was out of commission, but we got it blown up, and so it's working.
That is definitely some big numbers. Like 1,000 big.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One is, I feel like I saw this somewhere, I'm not sure where, that for Cheryl's position that you're looking at that for as a 30-hour replacement instead of her 19 hours.
So that's what we put in the budget for this year.
It was for her position.
It's for it was for any position, but now it's probably going to be for her position because it was going to be for a library tech. And I was just going to offer it up internally, but now that she's leaving, leaves it open to post it.
And then I don't remember if you've done this in the past or not, probably not, but just wondering if you have numbers for some of these, especially interested in like the online days and stuff like that, like how well those are doing now.
Oh, the online programs.
Yeah.
So it's hard to do that for online programs because they're online and we don't always get a count for that. So usually we just have counts for the ones we do in person.
You can't count the number of people who log in.
Well, we can, but sometimes we do it in collaboration with other libraries. So we don't know how many are from our library, how many altogether. We're not always the ones that are hosting it, so we don't see.
So these Zoom ones are often multiple libraries coming together to share. I mean, that's pretty cool too.
Yeah. So we collaborate with the Tewksbury Public Library on a lot of programs lately. And then I know that Susan we do submit accounts. I just didn't put it in here, so there probably is a count somewhere. I just don't have it.
I would be curious to see the trends on these, if we have any, in terms of how many are attending virtual versus in person. And if both are being well attended, then we should keep both going, clearly.
Yeah, a lot of libraries are finding that a lot of patrons aren't quite comfortable coming in yet. So they're trying to do hybrids, but it's hard to do both obviously set up.
Yeah.
You need the best webcam is called an owl, and it's like $1,000. And kind of like it zooms around and looks at people. It has like a sensor that tells you when someone's speaking, so it looks at the person. So it's been hard, but we're working on it.
Being wistful, like for my support on doing the hybrid people avoiding.
Yeah. Well, and I think if the virtual ones are being well attended, then they could remain virtual. Like that's an option somebody could choose.
And I agree with Norley. I would love to see the stats on the ones you're able to provide. So I think that's just a data to have. And are you keeping data on the library of things? Like what's coming in and out or what's?
Yeah, ASPA keeps a count of that.
And then the last I guess just a shout out. I don't remember who the person is, but it's a kid who organized and runs the dyslexia reads. Called the Lovers, which is really amazing. Yeah. So, I don't know. Katrina knows the name. I was just shouting
His
out.
name is John, but I don't remember his last name.
Yeah. The dyslexia reads.
So, nice, sorry, example of like collaboration, because that gets a lot of, press is the right word, but like advertising on, the Facebook pages, with CPAC and things like that. Yeah, that's a really nice partnership with the library for this event.
Yeah. Definitely. So the other partnership, and I don't see it listed here, is I attended the Jelly Print
Oh, yeah.
event that was a grant from the Cultural Council. Does that count as a Cultural Council event? And that's why it's on here. Okay. It was great. Like that's another one. I love when those kind of things come in and they're still open to everyone. That would be really, it's a nice way to decompress the night.
Just there's a soap one next week. I'm going to.
Yeah. And there's like a silk printing one over April break. Like those, I don't think those are library things necessarily out of our budget, but it's nice to have these extra things that are still open to the public. And we signed up through the library, so that was made it easy for them too, I'm sure. All right, any other questions about the meeting rooms or still high demand?
I can answer to track it now and make more work on, but I think that those sorts of things like knowing the cultural council, because I think we've talked to the team about how important the partnerships are, because we built the library, I think I've joined that really late, but I voted for the library because it was a center for the entire town, and the partnerships with the entire town. And I think the more data we have around that, especially when we're going to be asking for additional funds in the future or things like that, to be able to show that, these programs existed and how many were crossed, and not just a library event. But yeah, showing these collaborations might be really important to start gathering now.
I do think that would be great to classify somehow so that we have it. So we have evidence of.
Yeah, Susan keeps track of everything in the spreadsheet.
Seed Library Open House, that's now run by Friends, right? Or did you guys do that? The Friends, the Seed Library.
Oh, the Seed Library,
Friends.
that was,
So you guys did it.
the Friends are paying
Paying
for
for
it,
it, okay.
but it was really helpful.
Helen did all the work. She also has leftovers that she's repurposed.
Right.
We'll come out soon.
And there's a real marketing option. Marketing's not the right word.
I think it's an advocacy option, like for
That's
the more we can collaborate with other groups, like Cultural Council is clearly a connected group that we should be working with. But the other one, I talked to Diane just to make sure she had support, but she's working with the Conservation Trust to do the story walks. So she already has one for June and October, I believe, and those dates are already submitted to conservation and approved. So like all of that's again, like another board, another group of people who help us advertise things and connect both groups to each other. I think in the world where we don't have a town paper, everything's kind of scattered, like having those shared announcements and moments actually broadens both groups.
Oh,
audience. Completely. So like the same with the CPAC and the dyslexia reads.
Yeah.
Events, and then so if we have ideas like this, and even if the library staff can't take it on, if someone's like passionate and wants to work on one, we could probably do that, right? So we could still list it on our calendar and work with it that way. So speaking of which, in June, Diane's probably going to need help with some stuff. But we'll get back. She's doing it as part of summer reading, so that's great. All right. If we're done with the director's report, I don't see anything under old business unless someone has something under old business. Let's jump into the business. Okay, so there's this first bullet on our agenda, the library electric bill / trust funds. Is actually, I've split it into two separate discussion points for tonight. So the first one I want to tackle is the library electric bill. So the issue that was brought to us has actually been brought to the town, not just the library. is that the town facilities budget, has a deficit of about $93,000 for fiscal year 22. And when I attended the March 28th select board meeting, Mark was there actually, for this discussion, the finance director presented that the deficit is due not only to the adding on of the new building here, but also increased electricity usage at the police station, DPW, the other town buildings. There's increased gas use in the town hall. There's been some unexpected maintenance things that have popped up, like burst pipes, things like that. All of that's contributed. And then in addition to all this, there was an unexpected electricity rate hike in fiscal year 22 that wasn't expected, so therefore wasn't budgeted for. So that was also a contributor to the current deficit. So just in other words, like the entirety of the current facilities budget deficit is not solely to the addition of the new library, but we are a contributor to the problem the town's facing right now. And that rate hike is definitely not helping the situation. So at our meeting with the finance director in March, she approached us to ask the trustees to give the town $26,000 from our trust funds as a one-time good faith gesture to address the library's portion of the deficit. That $26,000, we've seen the bills and things like that, is based on the month-to-month difference between the actual bills for this new library compared to the year prior for the old library over there before the hike. So really they're trying to, this is like the increase over here between the rate hike and actual extra electricity is the trying to get at. So that 26,000 is a little chunk of this $93,000 deficit. So when we're focusing on the library here, just looking at the history and thinking through this, the town in our position, or what I see our position might be. So the town, so I've learned about how these things are budgeted. The facilities budget is a whole separate budget. It covers all the town buildings, and it's not under we don't ever see an electric bill or anything. So that is not under our control or decision making. So it wasn't that we didn't estimate correctly, but the town was not sure what our utility bills would be in this building because it was a new building. And the old library used both electricity and gas. So there wasn't just a solely electrical bill they could base it off of. So there's not apples to apples in there. And then, so this building is purely electricity with a gas backup for very cold days, which doesn't seem to have kicked in from what I've heard. The electricity usage at this new library is actually larger than anticipated, substantially larger. And that is an issue that has also amplified. Our usage was higher than expected, and then the rate increase to help that. So Mark went to, so backing up Mark. So this new building was built for energy efficiency, and that this was higher than expected usage. So Mark reached out to the architect and engineer to discuss, to point out that we're using more than we were told we were going to use, what's going on. So you brought it to their attention. That's one of the things they're coming out in April, I believe, to look at. April 15th, so the next couple of weeks, or next week, to kind of see if it just needs to be tuned. Is the HVAC, lights, all of that stuff, is it set to the right usage to be as energy efficient as we can optimally make it, calibrate it to be. So that we will be addressing the future bills by trying to make sure this building is tuned appropriately, if you will. And then once installed, the solar panels are projected to save the town about $500 a month or $6,000 annually. So that will help defray the costs, monthly costs. So another thing for us to keep in mind is that we did not allocate funds to trust or materials in the fiscal year 22 budget. We have not made a contribution to the town for materials. So we actually have, annually, we tend to give something like 8,000 to 13,000, and this year we gave none. So we have some money we typically would be giving in that year. And part of the reason we didn't is because we didn't know how much the building was going to come over, knowing that any overage of the 14.6 comes out of trust. So there's a lot of things kind of fall in the air. So I did confirm that this is a one-time ask, that this would not be suddenly part of our budget, things we have to consider year after year. And based on our conversations with the finance director, it is expected that the library's utilities will continue to be covered by the town's facilities budget, commensurate with the other town departments. So we are, the thing we need to discuss tonight is the $26,000 and whether we should move that money from trust funds to help defray this deficit.
The town supported and the town helps with the process here, and it's been, I think everyone's hurting with budgetary pieces. I don't see a benefit to not doing it, especially because we're coming in right as projected, and we are looking to have the funds to do it. I think it's a reasonable ask. It's not how anyone would want to spend the money, but also like the lights to stay on, and I think it's like, I can't imagine a different part of town taking that up easily either.
It is a sizable chunk. Is it a sizable chunk? Fair allocation of our,
It is
how much we,
how much we actually vote.
yeah.
Is that your question? I think that we haven't been there. I think it's close to fair. I think it's fair to say it's fair. I'm getting what I'm saying. It's not under. I really want to make that clear. Is that this is, if you take like electricity and gas into account for previous years and compared to electricity now, like that it might be like less than 26,000. But I'm comfortable doing the 26,000 based on that month for electricity. And I just would want to make sure that, the public understands that this is that is what we vote. I mean, not like that we owe it as as a library, but that is our part. That is our share. Yeah. And I totally agree. It's a good thing to do this year, and hopefully it gets worked into the town budget accordingly, along with our efforts to try to get the electricity under control.
Yeah, for this fiscal year 23, they have at least a few months budget with which to forecast next year's usage. And granted that amount will be a little off because we're not tuned and we're not right, but hopefully if we get it tuned, it will be under that usage and it will be less. So our job is to make sure that we get this building working as efficiently as we can and using it correctly so that it can be efficient.
What's the time frame that amount of money covers? Is that like all of 21? Or we only open in June? Or like what's the?
So I have the the electricity got turned on in May of 2021. And the frustrating part is the largest chunk of the largest bills that got accrued were when construction was going on.
So it was.
And so lots of things were open and not running efficiently and whatnot. So it's still construction, right? Like it was still library. The only one in here was library. That was construction thing going on. That said, the remainder of the bills each month are still sizable and more than we expected. So, it was like comparing it to the old building. It was like the same pattern, like when it's highest, when it's lowest outside of once we get the keys is similar to the old building. It's just magnitude higher because of the size of it. Sure. Yeah. It's frustrating. Like this is not how we want to spend our money, but we have money to spend. In terms of departments, we are lucky to have trust funds and outside sources that we can use to benefit not only the library but the town in this space. And in the town, we've just built a library. Like it doesn't feel right for us to be like, we won't pay this one. Right. To me, this is like this goodwill gesture is important for us to be to try to recognizing that we didn't know how much to budget for this new building and the bills, and that things aren't tuned right and the fund higher than expected and all those things, and that at this point we will next year should have better forecasts because we know the rate hike and we know the usage. So next year the town should be able, like that's out of our hands. We didn't make those numbers, we didn't come to those numbers not actually, to be honest, I'm still not sure how they come to those numbers. That's not our job to know the meat of, so.
They didn't come to us with a whole bill.
They did not come to us with a whole bill. And
Now you're Kimberly looked at similar numbers and ran through some of them for market. This doesn't seem unreasonable. It's sticker shock doing what I pay at my house, but you know, again, it's a library. This doesn't seem unreasonable. And I would be very concerned if we nickel and dimed, yeah, I will give you 20 on this, and just what that looks like in terms of being a good neighbor as we're asking, just looking forward to what we're asking for budgetarily, you know, in terms of librarians and staffing and things like that moving forward. I don't think this is worth it because we do have it.
We have it.
We also spend it.
Yeah, you made a really good point too that, you know, the town came together for us to vote for us, but for the library, and so, overwhelmingly, you know, beautiful time, so it's, you know, it just felt like a responsible thing.
so I drafted a potential motion and we can amend it if we so choose. So I wrote, move that the trustees allocate $26,000 from trust funds in the 300 or 400 level. We will get into that detail in a second, as a one-time transfer to pay for the library's portion of the fiscal year 2022 electric bill. Okay, so we need to be a little more specific on which funds we are pulling this $26,000 from. Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Read you 4 times and I typed
That's okay. I'm actually
Should we vote on it and then decide on where the funds are coming from? Because that's not really part of the vote.
that's a for the vote, right? Okay, this is the draft version I'm sending to you, Chris.
second the motion.
Okay, so let's have a discussion on the wording of this. Is there any changes that maybe you would like to make or should be made legally? Okay. Motion has been moved and
Who
seconded.
just moved them? Is it you that moved it? Who moved the motion?
Yes, I did.
Judith. I don't know if you can.
I cannot move that. Sorry.
Do you want me to read it?
Oh, there's Karen.
Mayor's here.
Okay. I move that the trustees allocate 26,000 from trust funds, 300 and or 400 as a one-time transfer to pay for the library's portion of the FY22 electric bill.
Second the motion.
Should also include the lines in there.
Do you think so?
Yeah, because the minutes have to go to,
Oh,
Yes.
Yes, you're right. Okay, so these minutes go to the finance department, which then authorizes them to pull.
But it doesn't have to be the motion, or can we just, because the minutes are getting.
I should be.
Okay,
Okay,
go for it.
so,
All right, so we're doing 311 and 314.
yeah, so before this meeting, Kimberly and I were looking at these numbers to figure out from the Bryce report, figure out where we could pull $26,000 without like zeroing out some of those lines. We thought splitting it between line 311 and 312. 314. Sorry, 314. I can't read it. 311 and 314 would still keep those
Robust.
robust.
So 13,000, 311, 13,000.
We could split that differently as well if we so choose.
I think it's fine to do that.
Do we need to specify half and half on this? Because
Yeah, that's why the amount.
Because the actual amount was the 26,300 something. Does she want us to do that, or does she want us to do those?
that is a good point. So the 26,000 is the estimate. The number that she presented to us was $26,192.83.
Well, you lose me.
How about we can do 26,200 and go above and beyond by a few dollars.
I'm comfortable. That's a clean.
Can we make that happen?
Yeah, we split it up into 2 accounts.
Yeah. So $26,200. We're gonna do the
311 and 311.
311 fund for how much?
13,100.
311 or 13,000
And 100.
314 for the same.
and 314. For the same.
Same amount. Which I got 26,000.
Okay, so the proposed motion is move that the trustee, actually, Chris, you have the actual notes, we're gonna read.
Let me read that.
Yes, please.
Ms. Gill moved that the trustees allocate $26,200 split in two amounts for trust funds 311 for $13,100 and 314 for $13,100 as one-time transfer to pay the library's portion of the FY22 electric bill. Ms. Isaac seconded the motion.
All right,
We vote, we vote.
we have not voted yet.
So, technical question, does Miriam have to read it again? She didn't read it that way the first time we changed it.
Let's make this as legal as we can, guys. Okay. I'm actually, that's not, you're gonna have to read first. That's not your favorite.
All right, I move that the trustees allocate $26,200 split into two amounts from the trust funds, 311 for $13,100 and 314 for $13,100 as a one-time transfer to pay for the library's portion of the FY22 electric bill. Ms. Isaac.
I second.
All right. We are still in person, so we can say all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have unanimous board vote. Thank you guys for discussing this one. Okay. But it's on my Girl Scouts next time, they can't run through to try and turn it back on.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. They're one time a month. All right, so the next thing, the reason we met with the finance director back in March was, now that the building's here, I think one of our goals, and I think we've all talked about this in various ways, should be to focus on creating a fiscal plan and how to think about how to use our trust funds effectively, sustainably, predictably, to best serve the library. And so, in just thinking through the budget meetings and things that I've sat in on, one of the major reasons to do this is to provide transparency and documentation to the select board and FinCom, that and the finance department in regards to what we will be giving every year to the budget, town budget, because in trust funds, if we haven't planned for it and put forth all the documents to say that it will definitely be there, they don't see it as money that is actually in the budget, because it's not documented or guaranteed, if you will. So, and then the other part of this is using our trust funds to pay for things like planned expenditures for building repairs or improvements or furniture, the scholarships, the programs we want to run, things like that. We should be budgeting out at the beginning and then seeing where we are. So Kimberly, Mark, Sam, and I met with the finance department and with the goal to discuss an annual contribution from the trust fund that could be used not only for the library budget line in the town budget, but also as like for this fund that we would fund everything else out of. And from that meeting, it was recommended that we move 3% from the BART funds into our library account. So 15,000. The agreed upon amount right now for materials into the town budget is $15,000 for fiscal year 23, next fiscal year. And we said that we would be comfortable doing that for the next 3 years, basically. So fiscal year 23, 24, 25, we would guarantee $15,000 from trust for the materials line of the town budget for the library. And then the remainder of our 3% would go into the MMDT account to be used at the library director and trustees' discretion for other library needs. So the other part of this is tying ourselves to the town budget cycle means we might need to change when we move money around. So it looks like we might be moving money out. Not in January, we might need to July. We have to figure that out. When is the best time? I think that can still be discussed. That's something we need to learn about. Figure out when we need it, because we don't need it. If state aid first, there's like a lot of moving parts we're still learning. But so that's something that I'd like to start setting a pattern so we can be predictable. And then that way finance departments can rely on it, that means the select board can rely on it, means the, FinCom can rely on it too.
And we can rely on it when we have capital projects and things like that, you know.
Makes sense. Any questions about this? Okay. So I also wrote a potential motion for this. I shared it with Kimberly already, so I wasn't sure I was correct. Do you want
I
to?
have other screens, like, if you want to read it. Do we need this, is this entire?
The entire thing. So the other thing is we need to make this motion, we have to make the motion tonight for fiscal year 23, 24 and 25. Like that 15,000 has to be there, but in order for us to do anything else, we really need to make the broader motion of the 3% to give direction to the finance department so that they can actually make the transactions. We're giving them directions of what we want to do with our funds.
And it's just to make, like, because this is part of the motion too, that after the first 3 years, we said, the conversation was basically, like, we don't know, the 15,000 was kind of, to kind of make up for the fact that we're asking for more hours, like more library work hours. And so I think the question was, after 3 years, should we do more than 15,000? Should we do that? Like, it kind of depends on what our relationship is with, you know, how many librarians we have, things like that. So we decided that we would talk to the finance director after that and try to have a reassessment of what we should contribute.
And what our funds look like, all of that.
What our funds look like,
Yeah.
all of the things, yeah.
So there's 3 years seems like a good trial period to see. And a good period of time for just the agreement going forward, you can guarantee 3%.
Yeah. All right, I'll read it. The
I'll send it to you.
The trustees authorize the allocation of 3% from BARC funds annually to finance the library's needs. In fiscal year 2023, fiscal year 2024, and fiscal year 2025, $15,000 of the annual allocation will be moved from the trust funds into the trust materials account to be used for the library materials budget. Following fiscal year 2025, the trustees commit to meet with the town finance team to reevaluate and adjust the materials budget accordingly. The remainder of the annual 3% will be moved from trust funds into MMTT to be used for other library expenditures as determined by the library director and library trustees under the direction of the library trustees. The appropriate timing of withdrawal of these funds out of trust will be discussed with the finance department with the goal to establish a reasonable annual pattern.
Does that all need to be in motion? Or is that, like, I'm wondering, that feels like a big motion.
It does feel like a big motion. I did reach out to Alicia yesterday and said, is it just that we need to make sure you can move the 15,000 to fiscal year 2023, 24, 25, like is that? And then, there's still some vague, so some of this is vague purposely because the details aren't nailed down. Like when will we withdraw? We need to work with her and Sean on that. Sorry, I wish Mark was here because he would have this better.
So-
Do you have a feel for this?
So previously, we just would make a motion to take the funds out.
Whenever
The action, the action.
Right.
The action of the
So, as far as I'm concerned, the rest of it is really up to the trustees when they want to move the funds for other things. So if you wanted to say, you know, we move for fiscal year 23, 24, 25, $15,000.
Yeah.
And then
we'll make it.
the other motion, the other half of the motion can wait until.
Is there a downside to keeping the other half of the motion seems to indicate the intent though, just to establish a regular routines? Is there a downside to having that?
Now, what I don't, so I don't think we're in a position where we need the remainder of the 3% to be moved out in fiscal year 20, like in July.
No.
At this point in time. So it does feel like the remainder of the 3%, the less than 15,000. And she did say that so how does she phrase it? I'm going to pull the email right up.
So the $15,000 goes towards materials. And so that's a separate budget line that sort of gets filled in at town meeting. So that's why it's important to.
Yeah. So we need to do the 15,000 so that when we go to town meeting, that goes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't actually still exist. Like it's not money in the bank. So we have to do the 15,000. In my email to Alicia, I was like, when we normally pull money, they're like that money out in January, like that's around the time we typically do it. I think we do it other times too. At the discretion of our board, we get to pull it out whenever we want to pull it out. So she did say that we could say that there's the intention of the 3%, but then offer, like we could actually move it at another time in the year. So this again, as long as we get the 15,000 so that we have the town budget piece before town meeting, I think that's the critical piece. I would think this discussion should be, is the intention of 3%? Or do we want to table that the next month and have come back to that for more?
I think if you're comfortable tabling it until there's clarity, or so, I have no problem with it either way. And my experience with the budget at a school is very different. Like you have a date and it's kind of more what you're describing. And especially if it's coming from funds that ebb and flow, you don't
necessarily want to take it out if it doesn't get interesting.
Well, exactly. And 3% looks different if it's ebbing or flowing, right? So at some point you have to commit. You say, this is my 3% is simply that. And that's what I have to work with, not, it would have been this amount, but I waited and now it's down more, and then how does that work, or things like that. So at some point, like, the budget is the budget. And so if we're saying we're spending, the 3% minus the 15,000 that's going to the town, that is the number that you're working with, regardless of whether or not interest goes up, then that's great. Then, but like,
so really what we're saying is we're going to commit to the 3% if I'm hearing you correctly. And then we don't even need to move it out until January. Right. But we could say starting fiscal year 23, based on the numbers we have now, 3% is the X number.
Right. Like that's the piece that feels a little uncomfortable with me to not have it committed with, because if you've got rid of things tank, then that's a problem. But if we had pulled out, but if things continue to rise, it doesn't mean people are actually walking away with 5% that year. But that's, it seems like that's maybe.
So I wonder what
looks like.
Right. I wonder if we were talking about, and I don't know if that probably has to be part of the motion, but talking about having a library budget, knowing having a library budget, right? And like knowing sometime in, like we're talking about August or September, this is what we're planning for this year. So that seems like maybe a time that we could look at what the remainder of that 3% is and kind of base our budget based on that. I'm not great at budgets, but I think that's pretty much like have a number in mind, what are you saying? Like,
if 3% left over is $10 on July 1st, and the library is $10. And if we leave it in there and it rises to $12, we don't actually have $12 because the 3% was the $10. But it looks like we have $10 if we didn't pull it out, or it looks like we have $12 if we didn't pull it out. And so I think that, again, if we all understand that it's not actually $12, like I'm happy leaving it in there knowing that it's accruing interest. That makes a ton of sense. Why wouldn't we accrue the interest if we don't need it at that time? But
that was my concern.
Yeah, I think some kind of safeguard, some kind of procedure that we at least, on paper say that the 3% is as of this date, whatever the accounts say. So if it's a bad stock market year, we may not have $15,000, 6 years out to give them because it's a bad stock market year and our accounts are not able to suffice that. Does that make sense? So I don't care if it actually physically comes out.
Yeah. So the physical removal can be January.
Yes, we have to actually commit to a number at that time versus then going back and saying, oh, well, now it looks like we have this, or oh, we don't have it anymore.
So is it easier for us to commit to that number on the same fiscal year that we're doing the budget for?
I think it missed the number.
Or should we be doing it? So I'm thinking annually going forward, when is it that we're cutting that 3%?
I think it would have to, and again, I'm comfortable holding that and discussing with Mark, because he's way more experienced with this, and my budget is school, but I don't state fiscal year. But if we're going to be making a decision in 3 years as what we can contribute to the town reasonably and also make our commitments here, it seems like that number would have to align around the same time.
Okay, so we're talking, we need to start doing our budgets in like September. For this mission in November, and then it gets authorized in May town meeting. So we've got 6 months of time.
For the 2020, for 23.
For 2023, we started the budget. The budget we submitted was in November, and we go through the budget process. So 6 months later in May is when town votes on it at town meeting.
So the remainder of the 3%, but if we're talking about the budget, that would be for FY24 at that point. for the range of that 3%, but we want to potentially have that 3% for 2023, right? So, yeah.
I think we motion the first half.
Of the 15,000.
The 15,000 for fiscal year 2023 to 25.
Right, and if Chris can kind of capture the notes, that like the following discussion is, coming to some kind of agreement among the board that we have a date, that is the date.
That's what we call it.
Yeah, we call it, yeah. I mean, I feel like we shouldn't be making a decision or motioning anything that happens in the FY 24-25 until we're.
No.
Committed to 24-25.
The 15,000 for the town
Right.
materials, library materials budget it's not committed.
No, sorry, we did not.
But we-
Right.
In discussion with people said that we would be willing to, the three of us were at the meetings, not everyone, so we can have this discussion clearly. We're willing to look forward 3 years so that the town could rely on knowing that we would be contributing a number.
Right. Well, we don't want to say 15K though, because 3% might not be 15K for FY.
Oh, so
Right?
3% is,
way more than.
yeah, it's around 40,000.
Okay.
I believe.
It was like
One-
69,000.
Well, so the
Minus
number
30,
there,
that's right.
so the numbers, we need to go back to Alicia on this because they inadvertently included the building fund, which is zeroing out, and that shouldn't be in there. So I think Mark estimated around $40,000 there.
So 15 is safe. It should be safe for that.
Okay, I want to make sure this reads correct. So you don't want to say 3%, 15K. Correct. That feels like.
Yeah,
So that's 15,000 of the annual allocation.
So what we really need to authorize is the 15,000 for 3 years, like that in.
The $15,000 goes towards materials.
Yes,
The
right,
next 3
for the next 3 years.
And the remainder of what we're talking about is for miscellaneous things like building issues that might come up or state or programming or. So
We have yet to put money.
Want to say 3% at all.
So that was the question, because without looking at
So
the
this-
budget, do we
yeah.
even know that we need
We don't know if we
the $30,000?
Yeah, and I think that's part of what's tripping me up, because I think we do want a target number that we won't go over.
Right. And 3% might be that, but it might be 2.5% as well, without really knowing, like, we don't know if it's $40,000 minus 15, like, we don't know at this juncture, and I'm imagining, like, next year, it may not be, the need for library presumably would not be as high, because the furniture should not be breaking next year. But 3 years from now, it's a different story, that way. So is it possible to motion something along the lines of committing to do the 15,000 for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25 to the town at this juncture and table the rest and come back to it once we have a little more budget digging to see what a reasonable percentage is to come out? Is the 50,000 putting out anyway?
I think the way that we got, yes, I agree with all of that. I think the 3% we had looked at, I think this started with Mark wanting to do, basically to have a budget for the library, right? As we have it, right? And so 3% was and I guess he said 4%, like a typical thing that 67, he says, which didn't make any sense to me, but that's okay. But and Alicia was like 3.5 to 3, so he decided to be conservative and say 3.
She did,
Yeah.
so this is what she did.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she's right, but it kind of feels like the electricity discussion we just had, where we're kind of making up numbers and going with that versus like actually looking at
Totally true.
what we needed. Yeah, and the only numbers that Sam could realistically provide us we have are building into sentence anymore. So I think that 3% is the best guess at best.
So looking at the estimates based on our funds, 3% is, unfortunately, this estimate includes the building funds. Once you take that out, 3% is around 40,000, right? A
But
year.
do we need $40,000 to be full? Because we take a range, so are we needing $25,000? Like if we look at what we typically are spending,
That's why we're gonna start having budget conversation.
right? So 2,000. So
We haven't, so the part of the issue here is that for years now.
Right, so but it's $25,000, that could be way lower, that could be way higher, that could be just right. So I feel like that, the 3% is meaningless, but what we know we have to commit to is 15,000, whether that's 15,000, having 3%, 5%, 2%, 90%, like we don't know.
And so just so I understand, so if we move money out of our trust into MMDT, it doesn't move unless we authorize it from somewhere.
That's our money, it's no one else.
That's our
Right,
money.
right, yeah.
There's not like, that's not a general pot that includes other town departments.
No,
Okay, that is a pure library.
that's a library fund that only the trustees can. spend money.
So we're basically talking about is like taking our money and saying we're only using this much of it.
But once we move it there, do we lose control over it?
So we can move it back if we had extra at the end of the year.
I don't know if you can move it.
So we have questions, I think. So what are our questions? Because I think these are really good ones for Alicia, so.
Can it move back if we over budget or if we pull too much out and it's not needed?
So MMDT is sort of like the trustees checking account or saving account. So it's, it's like your regular account. If you wanted money to just stay there, it'll just stay there. If you want to spend money out of it, yeah.
But it's not getting the interest.
Right, it's not right.
What is the benefit of pulling it out in one lump at one time versus our authorization every time we must?
It's really so that we have faster access to it. And it's not subject to the volatility of the stock market. So it's money that you have.
Yep.
But it's not gaining any kind of interest.
So I think we do need to try those people.
Is there a way to get kind of a list of, like, I know what's coming on my checking account at home, but like, if this were my library checking account, what am I using it for generally
So-
over the first of the month?
In the past, we've used MMDT very sparingly. It's right now it's that 4,000 or whatever it was that we talked about earlier in the treasurers. It's things like the scholarship money. We usually transfer money into there so that we can pay the scholarship.
Is that the programming? Is that where the program money that we have?
Yeah, sometimes the program money goes in there.
Friends for us.
Yeah, friends cover program money, but sometimes trustees cover that. Sometimes it goes for weird things that don't really fall under anything, like the jackets. That's made for it out of, well, it was friends, but we, like other weird things, like if there's something the staff needs, and I'll go to the trustees and say, can we transfer money to MMDT? And then that's what we pay.
Well,
So I
I'm
think-
hearing $25,000 worth.
No, I don't think we have $25,000. But to be honest, like that's where I'm like, I want more detail too. So let's table that part of it. I'm fine with that. I would like looking at fiscal year 23, like we know we have scholarships, we know we have the programming costs, we know we have some other things, and it would be good to have a little money in case we need, like we do have a repair.
Or want to build the library things or something like that, right? Like I don't want, like if you have this money, and I'm not saying spend it either, but if we talk about this as Wilton Education Fund, that people gave this money so that the library would have it and the library would use it for the library too, right? So there's something to be said for, we got some money, right? Like let's talk about what we could do to make this,
I do think
stuff for the
we
hard of
need
hearing
to,
and deaf and stuff like that, right?
when we're talking about goals for Sam in the coming year, we're
Yeah.
talking like, what is the vision that we want
Yeah.
to move this building and the library to have in the next fiscal year? So really we should come with a
Just start with vision.
Yeah, so
vision.
Without
We need a
vision.
vision.
And without reasonable, like kind of where it costs, the 3% is what's tripping me up. So can we motion that the 15 grand is coming out for the next 3 years? And like stop.
My only concern about, so maybe I'm misremembering. Is anything else with the remainder, the only thing she needs for town meeting
the only
is
thing,
50,000.
the only thing you have to say is, I think the latter 2 years, it's really just next year, that you need $50,000 to be transferred from the part for materials.
So the reason to do the next 2 years is so that we don't have to come back especially to another
It's
thing.
really a good faith
Yeah.
gesture. It's not, it's a good faith thing. As far as the remainder of the money,
I think it will make our budget cycle discussions next year and the year after
right,
more predictable.
right, it's a good faith thing. And so that really we don't have to have another trustee meeting where we say, okay, transfer $13,000 in fiscal year 24, fiscal year 25. The remaining money, that's, you know, like you said, it's really, in the past, MMDT has been kind of like, whatever, you know, there's no real stat of, okay, you can spend it on this, you can spend it on that. In the past, when we needed new furniture, we went to the town and asked for a capital,
Override.
right, a capital, request. You know, it wasn't that we normally pay for it. So I think that's the intention.
I do think the intention is if we know we need a shelf stack, whatever.
So I think
We need new chairs to replace one or thing, like to not have to keep going back to the town and say we need this capital thing that then takes 6 months of discussion to even, like we can't be guaranteed.
Right.
And if we have money we can try to use, then that's the
But
point.
typically, we could also call a meeting, vote on it at that meeting, have it transferred, but larger kind of umbrella, if I'm understanding your intent, which I support fully, is to have an understanding of where we're gonna cap that umbrella. Right.
I would
So-
like to see.
And that's a longer discussion because we haven't really had the opportunity as a team to talk about kind of values and where we're going, kind of loosely talked about collaborations with town and things like that. But we haven't really said as like a full team, like your success this year will be when we have this. So we can still access this money via an emergency vote if we needed to. So we don't have to pull it out today, but a good faith thing is to kind of, if the team is in decision, if the board's in agreement, is to do the next 3 years to vote on that so that that can be taken in the town, understands we have our commitment on that.
All right, so how's this for a revised commission?
I have to admit, I was confused at first that 15,000 was, I didn't understand that it was 3%. And then the first element was 15,000 and then the rest of the 3% was something else. So it's two components to this. There's 15,000 to the town or 15,000
For the
to the trust for materials. And then the remainder of whatever that 3% is for MMDT to be used for other expenditures.
As directed by us.
As directed by library director and library trustee, you have the direction of library trustees. Yes. Okay.
Right now, I have a revised.
Okay. Forget it. I'm working on this for Forget that.
All right.
That's for the next one.
All right. Moved to transfer 15,000